Just start a podcast, everyone says. Rely on your natural talents and abilities, everyone says. Great, I think you should do that. But if you want to take your show from amateur to pro, you might need to level up your skills. Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. Part 2 of this 4-part mini-series on making the shift from amateur/hobbyist podcaster to professional podcaster. Yesterday, I talked about the reality check. What does that actually mean? And today, as promised, I'm getting into some practical tips. We're going to focus on, I think, the most important part, the most important things required to go from amateur and pro, and that is you. You're the person watching this. You're the person saying, all right, I got the notepad out, Evo. Tell me what I got to do to go from hobbyist podcaster to professional person who is paid in the industry podcaster. And that's why I want to start with you. Because your abilities, your skills directly impact how successful you're going to be, how professional you are going to be. If you are like many of us podcasters, coming to podcasting was kind of accidental. Now, I'm a little bit of a weird situation. I was actually doing radio before that, and there's quite a few people in podcasting who have some radio background. But it wasn't that kind of radio. The radio I was doing was internet radio, which was kind of no rules. I kind of had to make these things up as I go along. A lot of us in podcasting, in the early days, and still today, we kind of decide to make things up as we go along. But when we decide to make that shift, when you decide to make this shift from hobbyist to amateur, there's only so far you can get on your natural talents and abilities. You might have a great voice, kicking. You might have wonderful diction, outstanding. You might be a natural-born storyteller, wonderful. These are all things you're going to need to become a professional podcaster. Maybe you're just really good for whatever reason, engineering, audio. Maybe you've always been a fan of the English language and you, or whatever language you speak, and you are an amazing copywriter, script creator. Excellent. Here's the trick about professionals, though. Professionals, by and large, and remember, there are exceptions to every rule, but professionals always work on improving their skills. Always. Again, exceptions allowed for. But that's when they become a professional. You have not yet done that, or you've only done it in the smallest of ways, or the beginning stages. You want to go further. There's only so much you can do on your own. There's only so much you can do just letting things happen the way they are. You need to level up, your skills. You got to do it. Now, it comes to, where do you start? Real tough question to answer. Where do you start? Because when we think about going from amateur/hobbyist to professional podcaster, we think about it in the context of that which we're doing right now, just doing it better so that somebody gives us a paycheck, either our listeners or some company comes along and does it. But that's not real. I talked about that yesterday. That was the reality check. If that might happen to you, but in reality, going pro likely means assuming a professional role, not necessarily an everything. Maybe not being the full-on host. Now, that may come across as a big surprise to you and kind of a shocking factor. Well, wait a minute. I just want to take what I'm doing right now and go pro. Go back and listen to yesterday's episode. Because this episode, I want to talk about how do you actually upgrade, how do you level up your individual skill set that you're bringing to the table. Part of that is having an honest inventory. Where do you see deficiencies? That's one thing. And for a lot of us, that's not really hard to figure out. If we're honest with ourselves and if we want to make that commitment, and we'll talk about commitment to this in a later episode of this miniseries, but if we're willing to do that, we typically know where we need to improve. And if you don't know that, it's kind of hard to go pro if you don't know where you have to improve. So get some help figuring that out. Ask people, ask your listeners, although careful asking your fans anything because they tell you, you're perfect, do what I want. Join a mastermind. Network with other people who are doing the similar thing that you are doing and have honest, harsh conversations with them. Figure out what you are deficient in. That's kind of step one. The other thing you can do is if you have a direction, if you have an inclination, you say, I'm really good, I think I'm really good at script writing, for example. And we know there's an explosion happening right now of scripted media, where someone narrates from a script, where a series of people narrate from a script. Scripted content in podcasting is going through a revival. Yay! Maybe you're really good at that. But are you really good at that outside of the one script you've written for your own show? Maybe not. Have you joined script writer forums and sites? Have you studied? I mean, think something like writing scripts. Some of these hard skills, writing a script. Some of these hard skills like audio engineering. Some of these hard skills like being a voiceover talent. There are tomes of information written. Have you read them? Have you followed up? Have you understood what the professionals are saying out there? You got to study to get it. And here's the thing. You're not going to get it by continuing to do what you're doing right now. Yes, practice makes perfect, but what are you practicing toward? Do you know what perfection looks like? Are you trying to improve your skills, or are you just jumping behind the microphone? Or are you just grabbing a pen and paper? Do you know what professional looks like? That's hard to do focusing on your own stuff. It's also very hard to do focusing on other podcasts. Because what you might think is a professional podcast might not be. It might be somebody else just making it up. And I need to say this now, even towards the end here, there is nothing wrong with making it up as you go along. If you want to take the artist way and hope somebody recognizes your brilliance, then you should totally rock on and do that. But if you're more pragmatic than that, if you're more practical than that, then you need to do an honest inventory of your own skills and abilities, identify where your deficiencies are, also identify where your interest lies. What do you want to do? What are the things you want to go get better at? Because if you try and get better at everything all at once, you're not going to get better. Focus on one thing. Focus on the one thing you need to do. Need to improve your diction? Okay. Need to improve your script writing? That's fine. Need to improve your audio editing? Okay. Improve those things. Find ways to make yourself better. Because if you want to go pro, you got to put some effort into it. And again, we'll talk about commitment and those things later, but you need to work on your abilities, your skills. The talent that you have right now might not be enough to get you to the professional level. So spend some time working on yourself. Build up those skills. I'm talking about this all week, the idea of going from amateur to pro. It's part of a mini-series that I'm offering about going amateur to pro, and I hope you really get involved with the conversation and really take these ideas to heart. And I'm curious how you implement those. Now, if you're just listening going, wow, this guy's really smart, I'd like to hire him, you can do that too. Sure you can. Podcast Pontifications is where you can find this, but you can go to podcastlaunch.pro to see a list of the services I'm offering clients who don't really want to go through the motions of becoming a professional, would rather hire someone or a team of someone's to do this stuff. Check it out. Podcastlaunch.pro. Send me an email, evo@podcastlaunch.pro. Tomorrow, I'm coming back with this conversation. We're going to talk about the connections required to go pro. That's it. See you tomorrow on Podcast Pontifications. Cheers.